you say anything horrible, I'll just cut it out. Don't worry. We have a little bit of post-production here. Okay. Hey, what's up, America? Welcome to Goodnight America. I'm America's sweetheart, Eric Ryan. What we do on this show, and obviously I don't have to tell you because it's the biggest thing on the internet, is that we interview the best and brightest authors that this planet has to offer. And today's no different. The man has a book coming out, which I'm going to let him tell you about. But before, let me just tell you, he's a former Walt Disney Imagineer. And Brian Collins has helped create the magic for virtually all of Florida's Disney theme parks. As a master storyteller, he engaged in a variety of creative development projects, including writing scripts and spiels for some of the world's most beloved attractions. Also, you just told me that your book is going to be on its way. What's the name of the book?
Yes. The name of the book is called Creative Cross-Pollination, subtitle, A Former Imagineer's Take on the Innovation Process.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's coming out. When do we think? What's a ballpark?
This is May, June, September. I'm hoping, fourth quarter of this year.
Oh, soon.
Just kind of like, yeah. So before the end of the year.
Okay. Beautiful. Now, because of your Disney and Imagineering experience, that's a hard word to say. Usually what I do is I get some news stories that are pertinent to the author's area of expertise, and today's no different. I think Disney is fascinating for a billion different reasons. Yeah. They're also always in the news, which is convenient. So the first one I want to talk about is this story from the Daily Mail. When in the headline reads, box office figures reveal extent of Disney's humiliation over woke Snow White car crash. It goes on to say how much money it lost and how stupid it was that they changed the source material. So this is one of the quotes from one of the Daily Mail reviewers. He says, Disney's contorted attempts not to offend anyone has somehow managed to offend everyone. He said there's a bizarre that they decided not to use. There's no dwarfs. The magical creatures are computer generated. And it says, in an effort to be more woke, Disney has also changed the thing to magical creatures. And somebody says, believe the anti-hype, it's that bad. It represents a new low for cultural desecration for a venerable 102-year-old entertainment company that now looks at its source material with a pinched nose of disgust. So, where do you stand, having been close to this?
Well, interesting. I think the Oompa Loompas have been looking for work for some time, and they could have easily, hired them. So, I kind of get the kickback here. It's really interesting. Disney's approach to filmmaking and storytelling on the big screen has definitely evolved, let's say, over the last many years. They sometimes, I think they do try a little bit too hard, and when you're messing with IP and characters that are so beloved by many generations of people, you're walking into a lion's den when you do that. There was a lot of kickback because the lead actress is, I believe, Hispanic. It's like, why would they cast someone who's Hispanic, to be Snow White? But they ran into the same kind of kickback when they remade The Little Mermaid, right? And they cast, it was Halle Berry, right, as Ariel. So, there's definitely always going to be issues with that. I think Disney needs to be a little bit more self-aware, in my opinion, about where their characters and stories stand in the imagination of their fan base. I kind of get that. Maybe, by trying a little bit too hard, it sounded like a good idea at the time, but maybe at the end turned out not to be such a good one.
I just don't understand. Listen, I don't really have a dog in this race. I don't should give a shit. I wasn't going to see Snow White anyway.
Right.
But it does seem, I hate when you have source, when companies have source material and they stray so far from it. So I'm fine with her not being named after her skin color. That seems a bit antiquated. Don't get me wrong. But there's also no prince. They're not in the dwarves aren't quite portrayed the same. The death of the bad guy there isn't the same. There's like a million differences. So why not just make a new movie based on this shit instead of calling it Snow White?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good question. I mean, if they're trying to little girls for generations have been growing up wearing the princess dresses and everything. My daughter, did the same thing. And I don't know if you're going to necessarily have little girls dressing up as Snow White because of this portrayal of her. It was, I think they strayed a bit far for the comfort zone. And listen, I'm never going to berate anybody for taking a chance and trying something different, but I think you got to do that with an understanding of the culture and the environment and stuff that you're working within. And I think, whoever greenlit this version of the movie probably made a mistake. I don't know if they kind of got it, to be honest. And this happens inside the theme parks as well.
Yeah.
So,
well, it sounds like a mistake because it cost a
lot of money.
$209 million to make. It made $42 million opening weekend. It looks like it's going to be about $115 million loss.
Yeah.
Which for Snow White and Disney seems pretty stupid. Here's the thing too, though. Like, you want to say that people's attachment to entertainment is kind of dumb sometimes. Yes. But then I was thinking about it. If someday they make a biopic about Tom Brady and they cast Tom Brady as a black woman, not that I have any problem with black women. I love them.
Right.
But this is a little weird. And, so there is a little bit of that thing, I think.
Yeah. And sometimes I think, our society's gotten to the point where people are just like really afraid to bring up any sort of comment about anything if it's referring to anything that has to do about race or demographics or anything like that. And it doesn't mean that you don't, you hate minorities or whatever it may be, but it does mean that, you're all woke and, whatever term is that people want to use these days. But I think there's some valid, points and concerns when you start recasting, especially in this case, beloved characters, just to try and appeal to different audiences in a different base. It doesn't make sense. I mean, I don't know.
Here's what I do know. You definitely cannot please everybody. So later on in the article, they talked to Peter Dinklage, the actor from Game of Thrones.
Yeah, right. Sure. Yeah.
So his point was, what are we even doing making a movie with dwarves in the title in the first place? Aren't we beyond that? And then somebody else said, the reason I don't like that the dwarves are computer generated is because there's so few acting roles for little people actors, and you've just eliminated 7 of them. So like, you can't make you are not going to please everybody.
Right. 100%.
Here's the other thing too, is they keep calling these live action remakes soulless money grabs. So I looked into it. I mean, I've only seen one because, again, I'm a 44-year-old white guy. How many fucking new Disney?
Right.
But if they're soulless money grabs, they're doing pretty well. The Lion King has been the most successful one at $543 million. Beauty and the Beast did 504. Jungle Book did 364. Aladdin did 355. You get down to the bottom, though. You're looking at Cruella, only did 86 million, which for a Disney movie is unfathomable.
Right.
They do feel a little soulless. The one, I think I watched Beauty and the Beast because my wife watched Beauty and the Beast when she was growing up, the animated version. So she forced me to watch this. It's the same goddamn movie, just with real people. So it kind of does feel a little soulless. It doesn't feel like they're adding anything. They're just cashing in on IP, which, whatever.
Right. And I think, there's a certain group of people who feel that, kids aren't going to watch our old 2D animated films anymore. Kids only want to see like 3D animation or real life, people. So we're just going to go on this tear and remake all of our movies. And I think they're just bastardizing the content and the IP when they do that, to be honest. I don't think there's a lot of thought, that goes into the ramifications of all this. I mean, Disney, has got a freaking incredible, R&D department, research department. Go out there, get a sense of what people want. There's so much backlash that keeps coming back, every time they put out a new one of these live action remakes. And I hear it all the time. Being a former Imagineer, people are always, believe me, giving me their opinion. And, I can't say I disagree a lot of times. I love Disney. It was a wonderful part of my life, still is, and gave me a lot of terrific, amazing opportunities. But there's a lot I disagree with as well. And the live action remakes is one of them. Unfortunately, there's a right way to do them and a wrong way to do them.
In the soulless money grab way. That's the
soulless money grab way. Yeah,
that's the bad way. All right, this is one of my favorite subjects in the world, and I don't know why. And I didn't anticipate this article making me feel a certain way after I read, but now I'm very confused about myself. So this is from the news statement: the Disney Adult Industrial Complex. So the grown-up Disney superfan has a much mocked phenomenon online, but creating these consumers was always part of the corporation's plans. It goes on to talk about these childless weirdos. Yeah. Who go to Disney and get engaged there and then get married there and continue to go time and time again. And it goes through their demographics. It's mostly American women between the ages of 25 and 44. 80% are female. 61% are married. 88% are white. 45% are Christian. 36% are atheist or agnostic. Atheists. We have to do better than this. We got to stop. Here's the other thing too. They always seem to point out that they're affluent. Well, no shit. You got to pay for the flight, the hotel, the tickets? Of course.
I don't know how the hell people can afford a Disney vacation anymore these days. It's
let's pause that because that's the next story. But these Disney adults always sort of freaked me out because I think just sort of objectively, Disney is for children and specifically female children. So if you're an adult and you're doing this, there's a little something off. I feel like there's a little something off. And I know that you hang out with a lot of these people and you don't have to say anything negative about them. But then it got me thinking. Later in the article, it goes, honestly, these days, everybody's kind of a Disney adult because they brought up that Disney owns Marvel and Star Wars and Pixar.
Yeah.
And I go to every single Marvel movie. Now, I don't go in cosplay and I don't go to the theme parks hoping to meet fake Captain America, but I'm there and they're getting my money. And then I started to think, there is an accepted fandom in the United States, and then there's unaccepted fandoms. If you would watched how many hours I watched of NFL draft coverage, you'd think I was goddamn lunatic. And if any of these Disney adults watch the same amount of Disney content that I have in draft content, I think they were out of their fucking minds. But being a football fan is socially acceptable. So when I do this, it's like, hey, it's fine. It's what guys do. But is it that much different?
Are my Miami Dolphins finally going to be set up to hopefully make it into the playoffs deep or
no? As a matter of fact, the Patriots, this is how I feel about this. You've kicked our ass constantly since Brady left. But, the one guy that used to whip your ass is Mike Vrabel with the Titans. So I'm hoping that he has the secret that we can go back to kicking your ass.
I just want to be able to die watching my Dolphins go back to the Super Bowl at least one time.
1972 didn't do it enough for you? You haven't held on to that memory?
I'm aging myself, but that was the very first football game I saw was Miami playing the St. Louis Cardinals back then. Yeah.
Of course they won.
And so I grew up, during the golden age and got nothing to do with Disney and Disney fandom, but, I just got to put a shout out for my Dolphins. Come on, guys.
No, that was, I think your coach gets fired.
Help me die in peace.
This is what happens. Tua gets concussed again. You guys lose like 4 in a row like you do every year. And then you fire your coach and you start out all over. That's what the Dolphins cycle is, which is nice. Right. Okay, but let me ask you this. So back to weirdo Disney adults. If you look at even the draft, the NFL draft, people filled that area outside of Lambeau to watch the NFL draft. We, as football fans, sometimes go to games with face paint. That's odd too. Do you think there's a distinction between what we do? But but the only caveat I would say is that ours is sort of age appropriate because I was very into He-Man when I was a kid. But if I still went to He-Man Parkland and got married at He-Man Land and had a He-Man themed wedding, you would think I was a goddamn weirdo.
I've got a fair amount of insight I can give you on this here. So here we go. So way back, when I first began working at Disney, they would do every year a Disneyana convention in Orlando where the Disney superfans would come and they would spend 3 or 4 days going in the parks and going to different presentations and talks and blah, blah, blah. And I remember one person that showed up every year was known as like the tattoo woman. And she had like tattoos like sleeves and, all over her body that were all like Disney characters. And that was the first time I think I became aware and exposed of that next level of fandom. I mean, listen, I've got a tattoo, you know, a little
Jesus.
bamboo that matches my daughter, but I'm not getting a sleeve. And I remember seeing that, and she was like a celebrity wherever she went. And over the years, and especially the last several years, I've come to really learn more about this community of Disney superfans who are. I can't tell you how many people I've met and I know who have quit their jobs or moved to Orlando just to come work for Walt Disney World because they want to be right there, you know, as part of the magic. And it doesn't matter if they are, you know, sweeping shops or flipping burgers or whatever. They just want to, you know, it's their happy place. And God knows in this day and age, you know, we need happy places to be in. So I would never, ever, you know, berate anyone for that. But I am constantly in my work in associations meeting people who are come to that next level of fandom that you're talking about. It's great. As a matter of fact, yesterday I was giving a presentation at a small event. I gave a lecture and I was talking to a woman and her husband. They had just moved here to be close to Disney, just started working there. And I said, you know, are you a Disney fan? And she shows me her wedding ring. That's a diamond with two little ruby mouse ears. I'm like, man, okay, I guess you are a Disney fan. And we had my wife as a teacher. We had, you know, one of her colleagues and her husband came over for dinner the other night. And, you know, the wife, super fan, huge, humongous. And she was like just beside herself because my wife never told her, you know, that about my background with Disney and all that. So she and her husband was just like the whole night, like just shaking his head. You know, I was like, he doesn't get it. Wonderful, amazing community of people, beautiful community of people. They love the company. They love the culture. They love the magic that Disney provides. And, you know, it's like the people that cosplay, you know, at sci-fi conferences or, you know, the old trekkers, you know, that dress up and do that. I don't really find it any different from that. You know, Disney is you know, just been able to create and you know, even with all the controversy of the stuff that we're talking about with like the remakes of the movies and, you know, redoing the parks and, you know, all these other, you know, things that they're dealing with as a big company, there's still that core. You know, that's a term that we all know these days. There's a core of Disney fans that just embrace the culture and love it. And, you know, it's great for me. It makes me look wonderful. You know, wife is like, shut up and take out the garbage. You know, like, never kept on your own ship. Right. Enough. Right. Yeah.
Well, when they ask these people what they like about Disney, a lot of them say it makes me feel like a child. It makes me happy. What they like most, though, is that it offers an escape from the world. Don't they know about drinking? Like, who the you don't have to go to Disney World to escape from the world. Shut up and drink like the rest of us.
You know what? There's a whole culture of people. Have you ever heard about drinking around the world?
Okay. I went. Yes, I do. I did it. And this is my problem. Can I just go off on my rant about drinking around the world?
Yeah.
It's a bar with the world's most expensive cover charge because the ticket's $200 to get into goddamn Epcot or whatever it is. And then they had the audacity to charge something like $14 for a Bud Light at the African Outpost. Every drink is expensive. You got to do the whole goddamn thing. You're in it for $1,000. You're drinking around children, which is weird. The last thing I want to do is drink in the hot Florida sun surrounded by family.
You know what? You see, you're looking at it the wrong way. You just got to like sell everything and move here to Orlando. That's what you got to do, Eric, is just get your ass down here, be in the proximity of the parks, get yourself an annual pass. You go in whenever you want and just get blitzed. It's one. And, you know, I can show you the best drinks to get. and the best places to get them.
You know what's hilarious, though? I will tell you this. No matter how drunk you get, those Disney princesses will not break character. You can ask them for their numbers over and over again. They won't do it. It's weird, though, that they have to be around a bunch of drunk guys. The whole drink around the world thing is strange. And then it's tough to get drunk because the drinks are watered down. So you have to rely on France for the champagne and, some other places where they can't really dick around.
Just gotta know where to go,
I mean, let's talk about this because I can take
anyone coming to Orlando, look me up. Go to my website. You can hire me. I'll take you drinking around the world or eating or,
this is
parks.
What I wanted to ask you about because Disney adults, you're clearly, if you're going there and hiring a guide, you are definitely a Disney adult. So you spend time with these people. Can we just pause there for a second? I can hire you to drink around the world with me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Do I have to pay for your drinks?
I mean, that's kind of like the nice way to do it. If you do dinner, you definitely pick up my dinner tab.
I'll pick it up the tab
for sure.
Oh,
but it depends. Sometimes I'll buy drinks. A round of drinks. I don't have anything.
I think 9 countries in, I'm going to forget everything you say anyway. So
right.
What am I doing? I'm not retaining.
Well, I always tell people, like, whenever we're doing that kind of thing, I don't get to go drinking around the world with people that often. Like as much as it'd be fun to do it more. But when I do, I always warn them. By the time we get to like China, you're not gonna know if I'm just making shit up or if it's real. Because I'm very good at and people can be very gullible. So yeah.
And you have plausible deniability. You were all drunk.
Right.
Who knows? Who said what? Who knows?
Right. You want to see a hidden Mickey? Hey, look at that gum on the sidewalk. Hidden Mickey.
All right, you're hired. One more point on this is that it sort of annoys me because so if ever anybody says they like wrestling, for example, there's always a certain amount of people go, well, it's fake. Well, no shit. Well, really?
Right.
We're suspending disbelief. And the counter to that is, did you know there's no real dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, you fucking moron? Right. So you have to suspend disbelief.
God, there aren't.
Well, I'm not sure. The science is still out. But if you look at, I compare Disney to Vegas in the sense that it's obviously fake, like fake Paris, fake Venice, fake Statue of Liberty. But you go, well, that's the wrestling thing. Well, obviously it's fake. You suspend disbelief. You're there for a good time. And I just can't do it in Vegas and I can't do it in Disney. But again, Disney is meant for little girls. It's the magic of seeing the characters you love on screen in real life. So it's just not, I've accepted it's just not for me, but it's also not for these Disney adults, really. It's just an odd, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, listen, one thing I can tell you is that over the year, people ask me if I ever get tired of going to Disney, because I've been going for, I won't say how many years, but longer than many of your listeners have been alive, probably. And the answer is no. And the answer is no, because at this point in my life, when I go to Disney, I'm looking at the park in a very different way, through a very different lens than like your average person would. And, you're able to kind of, especially once you become like really embedded within the culture and everything, there are a lot of different ways to kind of like experience those Disney parks. So it's not all about just getting on the carousel or Mr. Toad. Well, I don't have Mr. Toad anymore, but Peter Pan, or going through the Haunted Mansion, or and just riding the rides and stuff. There's a lot more dimension to it that can make a visit with adults for adults really kind of unique and different. And like you said, Erica, it really, for a lot of these people, it's a safe place. It's a happy place, where they feel good, they don't feel judged. They're among their own, if you will. And I'm never going to beat up anyone for that. God bless them. I mean, in this day and age, there's so much negative shit going on in the world. If people find their happy place at Disney, God love them. I absolutely get what you're saying. It's a bit, I love Star Trek, right? But for me to go to a Star Trek convention and seeing adults dressing up, with pointed ears and in uniforms and stuff, to me, that's, probably more odd than the people I see dressing up at the Disney parks. So,
same zip code,
but yeah, but God bless them. It's like, people you got to be able to find, your happiness one way or another. And if Disney can give it to them, you know, uh, I mean, I will tell you, there have been plenty of times where I've looked at people and shook my head, or I've gotten in conversations with people, and sometimes it's really humbling for me, because people who are these huge Disney adult super fans, a lot of them are really enamored with Imagineers, and a lot of times, like, when they meet me, I'm like the first time they've had a chance to get up and meet and talk to someone. And I've had people have meltdowns and stuff, and it's very humbling and everything. It's almost like, you remember the old Saturday Night Live thing with William Shatner, when he was
Get a Life, that guy,
yeah. Get Life, and he regretted saying that very, very quickly, and I would never.
Of course you will. You have Imagineer groupies. Who's going to right. worshiping them? So one more thing.
But still take out the garbage and get home. Walk the dog.
Your wife is unimpressed. She doesn't give a shit. You should have married a Disney adult. She'd be worshiping you right now.
She's not a theme park person. She does not like going into the theme parks, and doesn't like the crowds and all of that. It's like, the
heat.
Boy, you married the wrong person.
The $15 Bud Light. One more thing on this is, in the article, I guess it's a TikTok thing or an Instagram thing. There's video footage of some Disney adult breaking down when Pluto came over to her.
Yeah.
And then they went on to explain that Pluto was her grandfather's favorite dog, and it made her think of her grandfather. But then I started to think, what'll make me break down to think, like, when my father dies, it's like some guy smoking a cigar, screaming at the television. The Red Sox hit into a double play, and then I like, oh my God, it's too close to home. Okay, let's go on to the next story. So Disney World makes major change that leaves visitors fuming. You're never going to believe this, but it has to do with money. Yeah, so the bottom line is they're raising ticket prices across the board.
Again.
It sounds like Magic Kingdom is going up $10 on the high end from $189 to $199. Animal Kingdom going up $10 on the high end, $184 to $194. Hollywood Studios gets the biggest jump on the high end, $184 to $199. But just in case you're concerned, I wouldn't be. All is well in the Magic Kingdoms. Disney's theme park division posted a record revenue and profit for the fiscal year 2024, with revenue rising 5% for the full year to $34.15 billion, and operating income by 4% to $9.27 billion. Certainly, though, with all these profits and all these ticket price raises, they pay their cast members a living wage. Oh, it turns out they don't. Most cast members make between $16 and $22 an hour.
Right.
I'm not shocked by corporate greed. I know that's the thing. We worship the dollar, so anything done in the name of the dollar is fine. But Jesus, guys, you're making $34 billion. You can't pay him a living wage.
Yeah. There was this was in the news. Actually, I think it was a couple of years ago already, where there was a big push to try and get Disney to increase their wages. And I think they did. At that point, do it because it's getting so competitive, especially here in Orlando, where you've got Universal and SeaWorld, and we're just a hospitality city, and the competition for workers is insane. And if you don't offer people a decent salary, and not only a decent salary but benefits, that's one thing I will say is, as a full-time Disney employee, even part-time employees get pretty decent benefits at Disney, but the wages, I think not only Disney, I think, the entire service industry is well underpaid. And you're right. It's horrible, because how many people, are working 2 or 3 jobs, just to, go paycheck to paycheck, and all of that. So, I definitely get the, the outrage and the sentiment. And I do wish just the service. I'm a professor at the hospitality college, Rosen College. And, so all of our students are going into this industry, and even, entry level salary jobs can sometimes be, not really equitable to what they're doing. Nobody wants to, uh, go into a Disney park and find disgruntled cast members, as we call them, serving them their beer, or, a disgruntled Snow White would be kind of like a bad day, right?
Well, I think they're disgruntled because they're hungry, because they can't afford to eat, because they're making $16 an hour. And here's the other thing too: they have to live around Orlando, which I'm sure isn't cheap, because people love to live around fucking Disney World. So I just don't understand. They have any given Cinderella must have an OnlyFans to fucking counteract these tiny ass wages they're being paid. Like, this is embarrassing. This is okay. This sort of goes into the next thing, but Disney is an American institution. There should be a light on the hill where everything is fucking unbelievable and great and affordable and just does good things. But Disney has always been complicated. The guy. See, here's the thing. I love Walt Disney, but I could never say I love Walt Disney, because then you're like, oh, you're a Disney adult. I'm like, no, I think Walt Disney's legacy is buried with everything that it's become. But if you think about his contributions to the world, I mean, he pioneered feature-length animation with the original Snow White. He crafted the modern theme park. He changed childhood and parenting forever. He revolutionized mass media storytelling. He invented franchise-based branding. He did animation with live action. He built a global cultural icon. He set the future for media conglomerates. Yeah. And then on top of this too, like, he took huge swings. He had huge misses. He went bankrupt. He went through a strike with his writers. He built a house that killed his mother accidentally. He lost Oswald the Lucky Rabbit and then came back with what eventually became Mickey Mouse. This guy's life is batshit fucking crazy. The impact he has had on the world is, outside of, people that engaged in war, might be number one.
Yeah. Crazy. One thing I will tell you about Disney and the Disney culture is they do like to hire and promote from within. So even though some of those entry-level positions may not, be paying you the best rate, if someone is ambitious enough and someone wants to move up in the company, I will give them props that, they do like to develop their talent from within it, and there are opportunities. And I know a crap load of people who have done that, and leveraged that first job dusting off Cinderella porcelain figurines in, the Emporium on Main Street, and now they're managers or beyond. So there is that part. But for service workers in general, I think Disney finally now is, and I'm not saying that this makes the rate fair, but I think they're competitive within our market for what they do pay, because they have to be. But I think there's a long freaking way to go, because, like I said, I know so many people, pretty much any hourly cast member that's working in the parks, if you ask them, they're going to have one or two other jobs to supplement. A lot of my students, that they're working in the Disney parks, trying to support themselves, going to school, and so many of them have, 2 or 3 jobs. It's
Can you imagine sweating in a Mickey Mouse hat all day, and then going to Applebee's and being a server, and then still having to go to school? It's just, we gotta get better at this shit, man.
I agree.
Disney, again, is just it's so large and complicated and convoluted. They're accused of being woke. They're very litigious. They're very expensive. But at the same time, they revolutionized the world as we know it. Now, that seems like a grandiose statement, but it's not. We wouldn't have, I'm sure they would come eventually, but we wouldn't have what we have as far as full-length animated features, which are so ubiquitous today. It's just, it exists. I often talk about how crazy it must have been, like when Led Zeppelin put out new albums. So, like, oh my God, can you imagine seeing the very first the very first full-length animated movie? That must have blown people's fucking mind.
Right. And even stuff like, the audio animatronics, the robotics that are in the park, how they've evolved, transportation systems. Walt was so far ahead of his time when he wanted to create Epcot, his prototype city of tomorrow. all those transportation systems in the parks, like the monorail and the people mover and whatever, those were all basically prototypes, for public transportation. So, I mean, he was so freaking ahead of his time as a visionary with this stuff. And a lot of people don't, unless you've really kind of like dug into his life and really kind of like studied his approach and what he did, don't realize quite how influential he was. It was amazing. And I think to this day, to some extent, the company still does that. I know, from where I come from in Imagineering, there's constant R&D going on to try and create new products and things like that. It doesn't help the person so much, who's, again, like serving you your burgers and salads in the theme parks. But
yeah, I would say though, like per breath, his bringing joy to the world to negative stuff, it's pretty high. I know he has like there's an anti-Semite thing. So I've read a couple books and then I rewatched a biography. It says last night. He's complicated, don't get me wrong, but he's not that complicated. It wasn't like a serial killer or anything. He's brought a lot of joy to the world, his influences are so vast and deep. It's pretty wild. And I just think Walt Disney as the human gets lost in terms of Disney, the brand, and what Disney has become, good or bad. I just don't think he's celebrated the way he should be. Yeah,
I think like most highly creative, innovative people, there were a lot of different sides to him. I've heard, the anti-Semite thing is interesting. I'm Jewish, so that's something that I kind of tuned into when I heard about it. And I don't think, Walt Disney was anti-Semitic. I do know he could be a real SOB to work for, though. He was a tough boss, and it was his way or the highway for the most part. He had a very clear vision of what he wanted and how he wanted it done. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you screwed up or if you did something he didn't like, Walt would tell you.
He comes across as a huge asshole, but I don't think you can accomplish this much without being a little bit of a huge asshole. The one thing they did say in the biography, and again, I've read a couple books and they never really got into the anti-Semitic stuff.
Yeah.
Where they said it kind of happened in the biography it was more like being petty and vindictive. Some ex-employee pissed him off. Right. He happened to be Jewish, it looked like, and he went really hard on him. And they said it was because he was Jewish. Again, I don't know. I get no dog in this race, but whatever. I mean, kind of a dick, but he's just a wildly complicated figure.
Yeah. I think, you look at like Steve Jobs, I heard was the same way, could be a real SOB to work for, but brilliant. And on and on the list goes. So
I think part of the problem is why I'll never be super successful is because I'm just so goddamn delightful, Too nice of a guy. All right, listen.
I like you, Eric.
Oh, thank you. I like you too. So let's talk about you again. We've done a lot of Disney talk. So you have the Brainstorm Institute.
I do.
You started off as an Imagineer, though, like you mentioned. Do you want to just let's do what you've done? But can you tell that story about how you got into Imagineering again? That was off the air.
Yeah, so I was my first job out of school. My degree was in advertising, and I always thought I was going to be an advertising copywriter and write TV commercials. And I couldn't get a job doing that. So my first job happened to be as a script writer for a video production company, and I didn't know a thing about video production. But eventually I would go out with the producers and directors, and that's kind of how I learned the trade. Baptism by fire, if you will, and work my way up to that. And to make a very long story short, when the Disney MGM studios opened up, now it's Hollywood Studios, but back then it was Disney MGM Studios. It was very much a full-on production studio with sound stages and backlots and residential streets and costuming and, all the infrastructure that you would need. And so I moved up here in 1989. When the studios opened up and got my foot in the door with Disney, wound up writing a ransom note with a severed mouse ear and sending that to my HR person, which eventually led me to open the door to get in as a Disney Imagineer, and my job with Imagineering, my specialty is what they call a show writer, which doesn't mean you're writing shows, but you're writing for the Disney show as a whole. So that's where I started out writing. Like I say, came up with jokes for the Jungle Cruise and scripts and spiels for the attraction. There's an attraction called the Great Movie Ride that I think just celebrated like its 35th anniversary from when it opened. They closed the Great Movie Ride probably, I think now already it's been about 5 years or so. So it's not there anymore, but was the marquee attraction. So I worked on that and actually worked on lots of stuff in all the theme parks in Epcot and, so forth. And did that for probably about 5 years and got laid off after Euro Disney opened up because Disney Imagineering, very project-oriented part of the company. And so got caught up in a layoff. And, going back to my friend Steve Jobs, he once said, you can never connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them if you look backwards, right? And I sure could not connect the dots looking forward at that point in my life. But looking backwards, just went on to have a really kind of a cool, fun, interesting, amazing career that, went on, got my graduate degree, my master's degree in marketing, started teaching as an adjunct professor, sometimes full-time at different schools and universities, and then got into working with new and advanced technologies in the early days of like AI and VR and all that kind of stuff. And, that kind of took me to where I am today, which now I'm a full-time theme park professor at the University of Central Florida at the Rosen College, and I'm teaching that next generation. So it's amazing.
That's wild. Is it a thing where if you have Disney on your resume, it's like going to Harvard? Does that open doors? Are people interested in that?
I think it depends. I won't lie and tell you that having that Imagineer pedigree has definitely opened doors for me. And that in particular has been a big help. It really, I think, captivates a lot of people, especially, several years ago, they had the Imagineering story that came out on the Disney Channel. A lot of people have seen that. And, the role of Imagineers and who we are and what we do has really become a little bit better well known than it was earlier in my career. So that does definitely get it. The Disney on a resume, I think, again, depending on what you did and how you did it and how you positioned what you learned from that role. My very first role at Disney, when I first got hired in the company, I thought, being a producer in Miami, right, big hotshot, for a whole year, they'd be like, here are the keys to the corner office, Mr. Collins, and how's that view of the castle out the window? And my first job was hired at the front desk of the Contemporary Resort, checking in guests. And fortunately, I didn't have to do that for very long because that wasn't, what my ambition was. But that's where I learned everything about Disney guest service and the culture and, all the wonderful things. And especially back then when I was hired, it was a little bit different culture and it was just amazing. And all those kinds of lessons I learned that served me well, not only, at Disney, but even to this day in my career. So I think people that have Disney on their resume, depending on if and how they're able to position it and certainly what kind of role they had. When you get into the level that I was, where you're talking about like salary positions and professional roles, I think it absolutely helps because I think it's still looked at a company that people understand it. If you work there, you kind of have a certain amount of credibility and they know the professional development that a person will get working for a company like that. So
after drinking around the world, I got put in Disney jail. So I do have Disney on my criminal record, but not on my resume, which is kind of the same thing in many ways. We're coming up on the hour. Do you want to talk about the book?
The book. Yes, I do. So I wrote a book. It's called Creative Cross-Pollination, Former Imagineers' Take on the Innovation Process. Hopefully, we're going to have that puppy published and out the door. I'm hoping in about 4 months or so from now. It's with a publisher, and we're going to be cleaning it up a little bit and all of that. But anyway, the book is basically goes back to this concept of creative cross-pollination, which is not something that I personally developed. I kind of named it maybe and gave it that name. But basically, creative cross-pollination, in my eyes, it's something that technique that is in all of our DNA. Every single one of us has, and humans have had this since we've been living in caves. And, our distant cousin Ugg had to figure out how to tell people about the great, elephant hunt and, all the success he had, and to color on a cave wall. He couldn't just go down to Home Depot and buy paint. So he remembered, berry juice stained his hands, or maybe like a burnt stick, he could draw on the cave walls with that. And to me, that's kind of like the earliest maybe examples of cross-pollinating, and humans have been doing it ever since. And it's a technique that once you become aware of it and you learn some techniques on how to manifest it, and you start to do this consciously, because we all do it. Every one of us do it every single day, multiple times a day. Whether it's taking a match and trying to, get that piece of steak out from between our teeth, or whatever it may be. But once you're conscious of using this creative cross-pollination technique, then it can really, I think, open up a lot of, doors for you in terms of being able to solve challenges and problems, not only in work, but just in your life. As far as I'm concerned, you can't separate the two anyway, life and work and school. And, it's all this big interconnected thing that we're all going through. And, so that's basically the book. And I'm very thrilled and excited for it to be coming out.
Me too. My cross-pollination experiment right now is poor interviewing skills combined with a hangover. Is that good? That's not bad, right? It's going to open up the door.
Well, yeah.
Listen, I've been at it for a while. I've been hungover for many, many days in a row now. All right, Brian. Thank you for coming. Listen, do me a favor. Thank you for being on. You were great. You're the first actual Disney ex-employee who I was able to ask about this thing that fascinates me.
Cool.
From a distance. Again, I am not a Disney adult. I swear to God.
Hey, listen, we'll have to, get you over to the dark side, Eric, and you might find that you like it.
It's not happening unless, have they opened up Stripper Town yet?
You find the right princess. I'm just saying.
I tried a lot, very hard with all of them.
The problem is that they're getting much younger, as I'm getting much older. And
that's okay. I should preface, I haven't been there in about 20 years. Here's the other thing too. They can't break character. They're making $16 an hour. Who's going to throw that gig away?
That's true.
They can't afford to break character. Okay. Do me a favor, stay in the green room for a second. I'm going to log off the official broadcast. And
you bet.
I'll be back tomorrow, America. Have a lovely evening. Don't go to Disney. It's very expensive.
No, go.